السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد، سيدنا وسندنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا، صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Inshallah, before we jump into our material for today, I wanted to remind everybody that on Sunday, inshallah, we will not have our regularly scheduled Maliki Fiqh class. Rather, inshallah, you can jump to the Dar al-Qasim YouTube account, which I suggest you all subscribe to. And I ask that if you find benefit, also that you subscribe to this account as well. Both of which, because I guess you have to have a minimum of 10,000 or 1,000 followers in order to be able to live stream from your mobile. So it will kind of help us, help me, and then help Dar al-Qasim also be able to expand their capabilities for streaming. But at any rate, on Sunday, Sheikh Amin had asked me to read from the Shama'il of Imam Tirmidhi. And so we're doing that. We're having that dars. Inshallah, we're reading with the unbroken chain of narration from my most beloved Ustadji Maulana Hassan, who is currently the Emir of the Khatm al-Nubuwa in Pakistan, and a very saintly and virtuous person, almost to an unbelievable degree. So inshallah, we will be reading that on Sunday, but it's going to be on Dar al-Qasim's channel, DARULQASIM. Inshallah, I will try to link in the comment section the link to that page. So if you're tuning on Sunday at the same time, inshallah, go ahead and go to that page, inshallah, and we can take the barakah of the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we started that also from the middle of the book, because many people oftentimes begin these books but they don't finish them. So we're gonna start that from the middle of the book, or we did start that last week from the middle of the book. And I think my page also has a playlist with links to those durus, although we've only done one so far. So inshallah, you can look for them here as well if you want to not tune in live, but tune in after the fact. The thought process with that again is that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his kalam has barakah in it, and his mubarak zat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his mubarak person, has barakah and is itself a reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fend from this ummah balaya and afat, tribulations and calamities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us connected with him in this world and in the hereafter. Ameen. I also, before starting the dars, I wanted to give a shout out to my wife's first cousin. He's a young man. He's the age of my children. He's, I think, 10 or 11 or 12, something like that. Saad Haidar. He just had the ceremony for the completion of his hifz today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the memory of the Quran solid in his heart, and give him the tawfiq now of learning the Arabic language and learning the meanings of the Quran, and that he become a man who stands and speaks. When he speaks with the Quran on his tongue, and with the Quran, when he feels with the Quran in his heart, and when he acts according to the Quran, and when he rules and makes judgment, he makes judgment according to the Quran, rather than an operatic performer on weeknights in Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give tawfiq. MashaAllah, they are from a clan of the Sadat, of the Awlad of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it makes me happy when anybody takes up the responsibility for this Mubarak ilm and knowledge, and to preserve and guard this Mubarak Quran. But when somebody from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam does it, it brings a special flavor and a special pride also in the heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them and give them more, and give tawfiq, inshallah, to their family, both immediate and in a more general sense, inshallah, to champion this deen. and serve the ummah of their grandfather sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that they can take their rightful place and their rightful rank next to him in this world and the hereafter. So with that, we continue. The author Ibn Abi Zayd, he says, وَلْتَكُفَّ يَدَكَ عَمَّا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ مِنْ مَالٍ أَوْ جَسَدٍ أَوْ دَمٍ. We mentioned that last time, that let a person hold his hand back, restrain his hand from touching that property or that body or that blood that Allah has forbidden for him. وَلَا تَسْعَ بِقَدَمَيْكَ عَفْوًا فِيمَا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ. And don't walk with your 2 feet to that thing that Allah has not made permissible for you. And this is an interesting expression. Obviously, as a faqih, we don't take it literally, that it only has to do with not walking on your feet. So it's okay to like drive there in your car, or to perhaps ride a bicycle, or be carried, or fly in the air, or something like that. That's not what's meant. What's meant is just don't go there. Don't move in the direction of those things those places that sins occur. Whether you intend to sin over there, or you don't intend to sin over there, or you tell yourself you're not intending to sin, but you actually are intending to sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and forgive us and protect us from. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught this ummah, وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شُرُورِ أَنفُسِنَا مِنْ سَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا. We seek refuge in Allah ta'ala from the evil of our own souls, this evil ability that we have to fool ourselves and make fools out of ourselves, to use our intelligence in order to make fools out of ourselves, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And we seek refuge in Allah ta'ala from our own bad deeds. So that's as a faqih, and that's what that means. As a Sufi, as a person of spirituality. When I say Sufi, I'm talking about looking at the deen through the prism of the heart, and through the prism of the objective of worshiping Allah as if you see him, and if you don't see him, to at least know that he sees you, which is also something that impacts the fiqh. These things are these things are connected with one another. They're not, you have to look at the things, you have to look at the deen holistically. There's green tea with mint. Don't get too excited. So at any rate, the point is that from the Sufic perspective, from the spiritual perspective, when you look at this statement, there's also something there, which is that walking to places is something that has a type of spirituality in it. Walking to the masjid, walking with a janaza, walking to the musalla, the Eid, these are all awrad. These are all in and of themselves. They are awrad. They are litanies of dhikr that a person does. It's mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that when a person walks toward the masjid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with every step gives a good deed and forgives a sin and raises a rank. And these are all 3 separate benefits that are there with walking to the masjid. So we feel a bit deprived that many of us, at least in the United States, we build these palatial masjids out in the burbs. And even those of us who live in urban areas, we oftentimes don't walk to the masjid. And that's a deprivation that I feel sad about. Allah Ta'ala give us the ability to live together and to be able to walk to our masajid. Obviously, there's exceptions, but unfortunately, that's the situation that many of us find ourselves in. And when you go to the Muslim world, you go to Istanbul, you go to Umrah, you go to the Haramain Sharifain, all of a sudden you're required to walk to the masjid. And it's not just good for your body, it's good for your soul, because all these things are connected with one another. You understand what I'm saying? When your body is connected to your mind is connected to your ruh, your body is connected to your ruh, all of these things are interconnected. So when a person inside their qalb, inside of their qalb, which is the center of the ruh, of the spirit, When a person has a good intention and then the body is engaged in walking to that place, it has a good effect on the body, has a good effect on the mind as well. Remember that walking is neurologically a relatively complex procedure. There's a lot of things that the body has to coordinate in order to do it. And so walking in specific and exercise in general, it's good. It stimulates the mind as well. And so when all of these things are working in tandem, there's a lot of khair in it. In fact, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he advised some of the Ansar who wanted to move their settlement, a clan that wanted to move their settlement from further away from the masjid to closer to the masjid. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you knew what the reward and the benefit was in coming from such a long way in order to come to the masjid, you would keep it. You'd be patient with your place that you walk from. And they said yes. Again, this is a type of literalism that many mashallah masjid board member doctor uncles will probably find fanatical, but I take it seriously, and our forefathers took it seriously. And there's a reason that even in this ibara of fiqh, this wording is used literally. And on the flip side, what does it mean? If you're walking to somewhere bad, it has it makes the darkness, and it makes the evil of that act filter from the heart through the veins, pump through your blood, and become a part of you in a way that you just don't want. You just don't want it to happen. So a person let their 2 feet not make sa'i toward that thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made permissible for you. A person should be very cognizant of that. And on the flip side, a person should be avid to try to walk to those places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put khair and good in for you. وَلَا تُبَاشِرْ بِفَرْجِكَ بِشَيْءٍ مِنْ جَسَدِكَ مَا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ قال الله سبحانه وتعالى والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون. So he says that don't. He says don't touch from your private parts or from any part of your body that which is not permissible for you. And Allah Ta'ala says in His book in Surah Al-Mu'mineen, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَى قَوْلِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ وحرم الله سبحانه الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن وأن يقرب النساء في دم حيضهن أو نفاسهن. So this is a ruling that is very categorical in regards to the prohibition of masturbation. Of now, mashallah, the family-friendly part of the dars is we've moved on from it. So if there are young ones who probably don't need to be hearing this right now, where the discussion may get a little bit frank. So inshallah, there's perhaps it would be better for them to be for them be below a certain age to be occupied with something else. But this is a unequivocal mention of the ruling of the prohibition of masturbation, and the dalil or the proof from the Quran is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the believers as وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. It says that those people who guard the private parts, meaning they don't use the private parts in the context of any sexual activity, إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ, except for with their spouses, أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ, or the slaves that their right hand possesses. فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. In those cases, those people, there's no blame on them for that. And so obviously the slave that the right hand possesses is somewhat of a theoretical discussion. We're not going to get into it too much, except for to mention that I get every now and then some people who have this question with regards to, can a woman give herself to me as a slave or whatever? And the answer is no. Slavery is a particular hukum in the shari'ah that can only be entered into in a set of circumstances that don't really exist in the world today, to my knowledge. So yeah, no, you cannot just voluntarily make yourself a slave. It has to be like a war captive that's captured by the sovereign polity of the Muslims, which is not what they call the Islamic State, but an actual Islamic polity, sovereign polity. And that, like I said, that mechanism doesn't exist anymore. There may be a couple of places where there are still slaves left, like in Mauritania or whatever, but even that's exceedingly rare. So the idea is that so put that issue to the side, for a second, and it means that your private parts can only be used in their sexual function with your spouse. That Allah Ta'ala mentions in His book that those people who guard the private parts, and the exceptions are what? The exception is only with your spouse or ma malakat aymanuhum. And other than that, meaning the self or another person or some other means, whether it be, and the fuqaha mentioned these things, whether it be like an animal or all these other things people are into, whether they admit it publicly or not. I guess exceedingly now they've become proud of it. They have parades to celebrate that, but those things are not those things are not permissible in our sacred sharia. And further than just knowing the legal ruling, okay, if you know the legal ruling, that's fine. The sharia is not only the legal ruling as well. Like we mentioned, there is a spiritual aspect to all of these things as well. There's a Sufic aspect to these things as well, which is important in knowing and appreciating what the legal ruling is and why it's there for your benefit. And that legal ruling is there in theory because what? Because the heart, which we mentioned, is like the center of the spiritual makeup of a person. It is the most important part of the spiritual makeup of a person, and that heart is described like a city, and the city has gates, all sorts of different gates that you can access or enter the city from. And so those gates, if you look in the terminology of the Sunnah, those gates are referred to as jawarih, as limbs. And even though not all of them are limbs, so one of the jawarih, they're not limbs in the physical or anatomical sense. So one of the jawarih is the stomach or like the tongue or whatever. These are not traditionally anatomically thought of as limbs, but they are spiritual entry points for effect to enter and touch the heart. Now, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions in a hadith, for example, whoever can guarantee for me the thing that's between their two jawbones, meaning what? Their tongue, and the thing that's between their two legs, meaning what? Their private parts, Allah, I guarantee for that person Jannah. Meaning what? If you can stop the tongue from speaking haram and tasting haram and doing haram, and you can stop the private parts from engaging the haram, I guarantee you Jannah. Why? Because these are two very powerful and very big entry points to the heart. It is not possible for a person to have sexual relations with someone or with something or in a certain way, except for it is going to impact the heart in a way that the heart has no defense against. And look, this is this is an important issue, that there is an emotional and psychological connection between sexual gratification and between a person's spiritual state. And if you eat the haram, it's going to poison your heart. If a person obtains this gratification, it will overwhelm them, and it will slowly turn the heart in the wrong direction. It will poison the heart if they obtain gratification through their private parts in a way that is harmful for them, in a way that's haram and not countenanced by the shari'ah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the flip side is true as well, that the companions radiallahu anhum, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if somebody sees a woman in the market, a man sees someone in the marketplace and is attracted to her, then let him go home and make love to his wife, because he'll find with his wife what he found in that other person that was attractive. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions inna fi bud'i ahadikum sadaqatun, or kama qala alayhi salatu wasallam, indeed in the flesh or the body of a person is a sadaqah for their spouse. Meaning what? That a person, and if a person does it properly and does it well, they'll receive reward. The companions radiallahu anhum, they were, they expressed ta'ajjub and tahayyur. They expressed amazement and bewilderment that how is it that a person will receive reward for having sexual relations or sexual intercourse with their spouse. They'll receive reward for this. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, don't you see how bad it would have been if a person took their sexual desire to the haram and put it there? How much punishment that would have been worthy of, because the companions radiallahu anhum understood how grave of a sin this zina was. And so they were astonished. How is it that a person will receive reward for making love to their spouse? And the Prophet ﷺ says, don't you see how if a person were to take this desire and put it in the haram, they would have received sin? That's the amount of reward that a person receives when they put this desire in its right place. And the Muslims traditionally took this very seriously. And there's a lot of weird post-colonial Victorian era hangups that a lot of especially immigrant Muslims have, and even people who are converts to Islam, they have a lot of hangups with regards to guilt in sexuality that are like carryovers from Christianity or from Catholicism, or to somewhat of a lesser degree even from Judaism. Or even from atheism, because this is the dominant culture. This is the dominant culture that has been that kind of like has ruled these lands, and these lands have ruled other lands, and so it's kind of spread itself over the entire world. And the nature of extremism is such as the pendulum, when it swings too far one way, it's going to necessarily swing really far the other way as well. So that qawm who idealizes, for example, celibacy, and that idealizes staying away from sexual intercourse except for when absolutely dead necessary, that qawm, it's not surprising that they then end up becoming one of the most lecherous of societies known to history, on a level that proliferates fawahish and indecency on a level hitherto unknown, that turns fahisha into a religion. Like this whole LGBTQ movement, it's like a religion. It's not, I mean, it's like the primary thing that they identify as, and it is the yardstick against which they will then measure the moral worth of everything thereafter. And so the pendulum, it swings from one side hard to the other, especially like, or for example, the same thing, look at Catholicism. I know brothers who are converts to Islam from Catholicism. They said, my brother said, my grandmother showed me there was a sheet that had like a small cut in it, just a small slit in it. And he said that my grandmother showed me this to me. He said that we were taught in the church that, and this is in Latin America, that we were taught by the church that this is such a sin and this is so bad that it's only permissible because it's a necessity for procreation. So when husband and wife do it, let them do it with this sheet in the middle, so they neither see each other nor touch each other except for in the way that is bare minimum necessary, and feel ashamed of it the whole time while you're doing it, and feel repentant the whole time that you're doing it. Obviously, this is going to like psychologically mess a person up really badly. It's going to give them all kind of weird, bizarre hangups and things like that. So it didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of it came out of the fact that yes, committing zina and having casual sex is cheapens a person, and it's basically an act of disrespect that a person does to oneself, because it has such an impact on the mind, it has such an impact on the heart, and it has such an impact on the body. When a man and woman make love to each other, there are certain hormones that are released. Like cortisol is a de-stressing hormone, and the physical relationship that a husband and wife have with one another, not only does it release the cortisol, but it triggers the release of cortisol when the two of them are together later on afterward, even when they're not in the act of making love. And apparently, I'm told that if a person has too many partners, then this effect no longer is there. And anyone who is a scientist, in particular, a person who knows the physiology of these things, they're welcome to elaborate or call out if something is wrong that I'm saying. But the point is that imagine that, like, if you do it wrong, you literally physiologically will harm yourself, and you will also psychologically harm yourself. And the Deen is saying you'll spiritually harm yourself. But the point is that there's a happy balance between completely freaking out, oh my God, sex, we're all going to hell, and on the flip side, being very careless with this, to the point where you have these scenarios where, look, two men, when they share intimacy in that way, you will not have children, you will not have families anymore. You can call it a marriage, but it doesn't serve the civilizational function that marriage serves. When two women do it, it doesn't serve that same civilizational function. And whatever other permutations, there's LGB, TQRS, TUV, WF, none of those, the rest of the alphabets, they serve the function that a marriage does. And so you wander and stray into a type of incoherence that does actually threaten the way civilization is built. You can live off of the fat that is generated by breeders, but after some while, if enough people get onto that bandwagon, necessarily it's going to cause a collapse in any society and any civilization. And so the Muslims didn't take it then like they take it now. Now, what is it? If you grew up in a typical post-colonial Muslim family, what is it? You have issues. Other people have issues as well. But if you grew up in a Desi family, an Arab family, what is the hang up? Shh, don't talk about this at all. Haram. And until you get your PhD, you're not going to get married. Until you get a master's degree, you're not going to get married. If you mention marriage about marriage to somebody before any sort of like professional degree, how are they going to support themselves? How are they going to live? How are they going to this and that? This is very impractical. And the sunnah is that when a person reaches maturity, both for a man, both physical maturity, but as well as being able to work and provide enough to be able to take care of one's own expenses and one's wife, then the men used to get married, and the women, when they reach physical maturity, they used to get married. And there are two things that many Muslims will kick and scream and say that they detest and they hate, and they never in a million, billion, trillion years, that you don't have to look in any Muslim family lineage more than 3 generations in order to find. And one of them is polygamy, and the other one is child marriage. People used to, when I say child marriage, like someone getting married under the age of 18 by the modern definition of what child marriage is. And the thing is, that, look, if you want to grow up according to these values, the Quran says what? إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. That they guard their furuj, their private parts against any usage, except for between the spouses. Those people are free of blame. If you actually want to live a civilization like this, You can't just tell somebody, you're going to go blind and then forget about it. That civilization tried that, and look what's happening right now. They're all, mashallah, taking advantage of free subscription offers during COVID-19. And don't pretend like you don't know what Maulana Saab is talking about. And if you actually don't know, you should make dua for me. You're a relatively pious person. The point is that if you want to have a civilization that is going to live according to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than just lip service, then the sunnah is that people used to get married. Women used to get married at the age of puberty, and men used to get married either then or shortly thereafter when they are competent enough to be able to support a family. And support a family means what? It doesn't mean having a palatial house in the suburbs. It doesn't mean driving a particular type of nice and fancy. It doesn't mean any of those things. What does it mean? It means pay the rent, pay basic expenses, pay your electric bill, etc. To have 2 rooms in the house. If your pops is a nice guy that he says, okay, I'll charge you subsidized rent, you guys take this side of the house or whatever, here's a bathroom and here's whatever with you. Whatever it is, when a person can bare minimum do those things, then they should get married. It's time for them to get married. But we don't do that. We make this elaborate customary kabuki out of this entire thing. We make the process of getting married into like a pain in the backside. And we end up with then people who are, in their 30s and sometimes in their 40s. They've never been married before, or the process is so painful it actually ends up stunting or harming that relationship. Now, imagine when 2 people get married and they're young, they grow together. Whereas when 2 people are coming together, both of them just finished their MD, PhD, they're relatively chiseled and formed to a very delicate degree. They're relatively formed as human beings. How are they going to change? One of them is going to have to kill their personality in order to get along with the other one. And that's why we see, like take it or leave it type attitudes between husbands and wives. And, you can always default to the shari'ah and say, oh, look, like in a disagreement, wife should listen to her husband. That doesn't happen in real life. That doesn't happen in real life. If your wife does that for you, God bless you, mashallah, you just found a unicorn that's like vomiting rainbows. Good for you, mashallah. For everyone, the rest of it, that's not how human beings work, That's not, and I'm not blaming wives or whatever. There's nobody who's going to want to, nobody's going to want to be like, oh, look, I'm going to spend my life with this person, and like at an arbitrary whim, I have to like sacrifice who I am as a person and my mental well-being in order to like serve this person or whatever, right? Whereas when you get married, when you're younger, you grow together. I remember having this discussion out of all the fun places I've been and all the fun things I've done in my life, having this discussion on a train from Lahore to Karachi. And you sit with some very folksy people, usually in the lower AC coach. You sit with businessmen, but small-time traders, not like people who own like, multi-million-dollar industries, but like middlemen type people. And so there were some Sindhi businessmen, and there was a Pathan businessman and a Punjabi, and we were sitting all talking, and then there's a student of knowledge, mashallah. And I mentioned something about how it's sunnah to get married early on, and the 2 Sindhi gentlemen, they say, oh, no, the girls have to get an education, and they have to go to school, and they have to this and that, which by and large I agree with. Girls should get an education. They should go to school. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. They should be educated, both in the deen and in the secular sciences, and the boys should too, for that matter. I have no objection to that. But the Pathan, like Ajabul Ajaib, he just chimed in with this soliloquy. He says, no, we should get married early on. And the Sindhis were like getting ready to like, refute him. And he's like, I got married when I was 15 years old and my wife was 13. And he then went straight into, and the thing is, when you say that, it becomes awkward, because people will be very careful what they say about the topic, because they don't want to offend a person's personally. And so he just launched into a soliloquy about all the fadail and all the virtues of having sex. And he said, there's one thing, and it was in wonderful Pathan Urdu, mashallah. He said, there's this one thing, it's a gift Allah Ta'ala gave that me and my wife shared since we were teenagers. If I'm sleepy at night, and sleeping in the morning, it will wake me up. If I'm tense and I can't go to sleep at night, it will help me go to sleep. If I'm sad, it will make me happy. If I'm, confused, it will let me clear my mind. If I'm this, it will that. If I'm this, and he went on this like amazing soliloquy, and the Sindhis afterward, they're like, yeah, okay, we kind of get what you're saying right now. Look, your grandparents, my grandparents, they all got married at that age. And they were good people. They were better people than us. Our great grandfathers and great, they were better people than us. They were people who used to wake up and pray tahajjud. Sure, they did some messed up stuff in their life. So do we. But at the end of the day, the iman was there in them in a way that like we don't recall for ours. My grandmother was a woman who lived to her 80s. Allah, my maternal grandmother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on all of our forefathers. When I think back, I'm like, wow, she must have been like a waliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because all I remember her doing was praying when nobody else was praying. She would read Quran when nobody else was reading Quran, and she would go for walks every day, and those were good people. Those were good people. And we don't have to be exactly like them. They lived in villages. We don't have to be villagers. But this is one thing. Imagine them growing up without the angst of like this thing that's like burdened on you. You're thinking about it all the time, and you're not allowed to admit in front of anybody that you're thinking about it all the time, lest they judge you. And you have this kind of weird, like super sensitive disposition, because of which you can't even talk about this with other people. And religious people expect that like their parents are going to arrange marriages for them. It doesn't happen anymore. I wish it happened. It doesn't happen anymore. So these boys will go to like these, ages, and they are obviously attracted to the women, but they can't say anything about it because it sits in their mind that this is irreligious, or they have hangups, or because the shame involved in it. Like if I go and ask somebody to marry me, or ask someone's father, can I marry your daughter, and they shut me down, the amount of shame involved in it is going to completely debilitate me. The problem is that, like, if you go beyond a certain point like this, obviously you're going to turn into a misogynist, and you're going to turn into a weirdo, and it's going to strain you psychiatrically, psychologically. What is strain? Stress and strain. The difference between stress and strain in engineering is what? Stress is like when you bend something and then it comes back into its normal or proper form. That's stress, right? So if I can bend my fingers backwards, and then they'll pop back to like what their normal form is, Strain is what? When you bend it so hard that it can't come back to its proper form. It's deformed now forever. The strain comes on young people. And I'm only mentioning about the boys. Why? Because I obviously don't know what it's like to be a girl. And many of you, if I start giving girls advice, you'll find it disingenuous, probably for good reason, because I don't know what it's like to be a girl. But I imagine that our sisters go through something as well. And the shame issues are probably compounded even worse with them. And so people act out in weird ways, the brothers act out by becoming red pill alt bro type people, and the sisters act out how, by starting to post pictures of themselves where they're kind of advertising themselves with a credible amount of cover of being hijabi, niqabi, but whatever. Like one of my daughters, she saw a picture of a woman in niqab with her eyes done up, and she says, Baba, how come this woman is how come this woman has so much makeup on for just this amount of her eyes? I'm like, I don't know, bacha, I don't know why. If I say those types of things out loud, people will say you're being just judgmental, misogynist. So I try not to say those things. But, good for you for noticing. It's kind of defeats the purpose. But what's the problem? Nobody wants to marry the girls with the niqab because they're not throwing themselves out there. Nobody wants to marry the girls that are not throwing themselves out there. We have not given marriage a priority. So the sisters have two options. They can either be ignored and suffer in their own anonymity, or they can throw themselves out there and have some dream of being married and having a sexual life that's fulfilled. But it's not just all sexuality. Like sex is a type of attention, that they'll have a healthy person who gives them healthy attention and makes them feel beautiful, which is a need that all human beings have. Perhaps the sisters have more than the brothers have on average. And then the brothers on the flip side, why is it that, screw this bro and whatever? Why are they doing that? I promise you, if they were fulfilled from the time of their teenage years, that they would be different people. They would be like our grandparents were. not constantly burdened and thinking about like this one thing as like the elephant in the room of their mind all of the time. Rather, they would get on to what the actual work of life is, which is not to walk around like, like a thirsty pervert, but to actually, have a family, to actually build the masjid, build the community, provide for your loved ones, to raise your children in a nurturing way, to proliferate the ulum, to do all of these other things. And for that reason, the ulama used to actually write books about this. Yes, the ulama, Suyuti wrote 3 books about doing it. Imam Suyuti wrote 3 books, a long book which is very detailed, a short mukhtasar compendium, and then like a medium book that has a medium amount of details. But he's by far not the only one. I have several books sitting upstairs in my or not upstairs, but like on the upper shelves of these of the collection, not necessarily because of the sacredness of those books, but they're behind the masahif so that the children don't reach them. But there literally ulama wrote books about doing it. They begin the book with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu tabarak. There's one book I have. It's really funny. I haven't actually read the whole book, but people see it and they're like, "Oh, what is this, Maulana Saab?" And I'm like, "It's a book of ilm. Like, if you want, read it." I've never had time to read it from cover to cover, but apparently a number of people have like joked about it and like cracked. And I'm like, be mature. Go ahead, and they read it. There's a remarkable amount of detail in it with regards to there are many types of men, there's this type of profile, and then there's these types of profiles of women, and this is how a man can give pleasure to a woman, this is how a woman can give pleasure to a man, this is how this problem gets solved, this is how that problem gets solved. Why did they write those books, right? Why did they write those books? A pious person who wants to live a pious and fulfilled life according to the deen of Islam and according to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have to be fulfilled in this way, and they have to be able to give fulfillment to their spouse or to their spouses, be as it may. They have to be able to do that. If you cannot do that, then there's like we mentioned in previous durus, there's a whole set of predictable issues that will start to plague people and give them a hard time. You have to be able to make please your wife. And that requires sabr. It requires patience. It requires not being. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Don't be like the donkey that goes to the she donkey, that it just goes and gets its pleasure and then it leaves." And it's funny, when I was in Tuamarat in Mauritania, like you could actually see the way that the donkey does it, and it's savage. It doesn't look like anything at all fulfilling or helpful for the she donkey at all. You can't do that. You cannot be that way. And the problem is that when you have all this angst and frustration, that is like the basis of any relationship, when you're going to emotionally poison the relationship, because good relations, intimate relations, are built upon what? They're built upon a good emotional relationship that a husband and wife have with one another. And I'm not trying to be like self-helpy. I mean, it's true. If you don't like each other, then you're not going to be able to be like, "Oh, look, you're, we're copulating right now, so I'm going to now suspend what I feel about you and start to enjoy." It doesn't work that way. So the ulama wrote books about these things. Why? Because fulfilled people are very important. Fulfilled people are very important for a healthy and a proper society. And like other types of beneficial knowledge, this is also a type of beneficial knowledge that people used to have. And the only thing that we have in our civilization that we've produced in anything that comes close to it from our like small like little footnote of civilization is Mufti Muhammad bin Adam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. He has this like small Islamic guide to sexual relations. It's a step in the right direction. Many people oftentimes won't push the matter any further. Why? Because of the weird post-colonial Victorian sensibility, stigma that people will be stuck with these things. People need to not only, because they figure if a person reads about how to do it, they're going to want to do it, and if they're going to want to do it, they're going to want to get married, and if they're going to want to get married, they haven't finished their PhD or their master's degree or their or their education yet. And the fact is, by the way, I don't want the brothers when they read this, "Well, yeah, it's bogus. How come I can't get married when I'm 40? It's because our parents baby us. They baby the boys. We don't learn to be independent. We don't learn to be a man. Many of us end up becoming board members or even imams in masajid. You don't learn how to be a man. You don't know how to take responsibility for yourself. You don't know how to pay the rent. You don't know how to earn enough of a living to pay the rent. You don't know how to defend yourself, much less defend a woman, much less defend your children. And so it's not something that's a right. Procreation is not a right by any standard. As a man, even biologically, like even zoologically, if you want to procreate, you have to show that you have the evolutionary fitness required in order to do that. That's really hard. That's a really hard process. It's not an easy process to go through. But look on the other hand, and we're like, shh, don't talk about it. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this comes in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he would visit the azwaj mutahharat between Asr and Maghrib, right? Now the Hanafis, this is a dalil perhaps that your Asr may be a little bit sooner ala qawl sahibain fil mithl awwal, because it might require a little bit more time. But he was able to, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, visit each one of the azwaj mutahharat. And the muhaddithun, if you look in the shuruhat of it, it means what? That he was able to fulfill all of them in one afternoon. And that's the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from his khasa'is, is that he was allowed to have so many wives, which nobody in the ummah afterward is allowed to have. But I remember one of the ulama from South Africa was telling me, he said, I sat in the dars of the Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, the great arch muhaddith of Aleppo, of Halab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speed its liberation from the tyranny of the enemies of Islam. That he said that I sat in his dars in the Arabian Peninsula, and I heard him comment about this hadith and say that this is also a person should be in physical fitness and should be able to, if they have 4 wives, that they should be able to in one afternoon please all of them, and this is how you do it. And he said that he described it in an amount of detail I myself would blush to share with you on the YouTube studio because of my own colonial and Victorian hang-ups. However, it's something that they talk about, that they talk about to this day. Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda is like Alam al-Huda. He's like the flag of guidance. He's one of the most respected Hanafi muhaddithun and muhaddithun in general. But he was a Hanafi. He was a very traditional Sunni scholar that was respected by all different branches of Sunnism. The ones that other Sunnis want to admit are Sunnis or not, but all branches of Sunnism. His books are wonderful. They're amazing. He did, because the wasiyah of his Sheikh, rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, the adjunct to the last Shaykh al-Islam of the Ottoman Empire, Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari, he loved the ulama of Deoband. Al-Kawthari used to make murasala. He would write letters back and forth with Allama Yusuf bin Nuri, rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, the muassis of bin Nuri town, and probably the most prolific of the students, of Maulana Anwar Shah Kashmiri, rahimahullah. And he made wasiyah to his student that served the books of the ulama, the muhaddithun and the ulama of the subcontinent. And so many of the books, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda wrote ta'liqat on the works of the Deobandi ulama and the ulama of the Indian subcontinent. And he sent one of his sons actually to study in Banuri town, in one of the most renowned, if not the most renowned, Deobandi madrasa in the Indian subcontinent. And so these are not people who are like lack haya or like are modernist or deviant or weirdos in any way, shape, or form. These people are the custodians, guardians of this tradition. Their hearts were the pure receptacles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept in order to preserve the tradition. They were aware of these things as well. People should loosen up about these things. Not lighten up and loosen up in the sense that they don't take them seriously. They're very serious. But they should not treat these issues as if they're some sort of somebody just like gave you a bowl full of coronavirus, and like you just try not to touch it or whatever. It's important. Help your kids get married when they're young. Raise your sons in order to be able to not ask their mother for money by the age of 14. Get them like small time jobs, teach them how to budget, teach them how to live alone, teach them how to, not be dependent on you, like, like Desi mothers try to kind of keep the umbilical cord tied. Don't do that. That's bad. That will result in all sorts of like psychological problems and hangups and weirdnesses afterward, and it will cause a lot of problems later on in life. And whoever, if someone is listening to this and they're like themselves, like, yeah, man, this is bogus. I'm suffering from angst and difficulty. Allah make it easy for you. Allah make it easy for you. Allah make it easy for you. If you're a father who is like, hey, yo, man, this guy is crazy. He's talking some crazy nonsense. My kid, how is he going to support a wife, or how is she going to marry a husband or whatever as a teenager or something like that? Look, it's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the mafhum of which is that any child who grows up and their father doesn't help them to get married. Help them doesn't mean like I'm going to foot the bill or whatever, but like prepare them for it and like assist them in a reasonable way in order to get married. And that child ends up committing zina. فَبَاءَ بِإِثْمِهِمَا. Then the father will get two sins. One is that they'll be punished for the sin of that child committing zina because there was no way for them to avoid something that's very spontaneous. And you tell your kids, oh, look, girl's evil, don't look, haram, astaghfirullah, tawbah, astaghfirullah. You can do that, but the fact is, like, there's like an entire machinery of like anatomy and physiology that's like kind of built against that. It doesn't really work that way. And that's not the attitude that we see, that like, so-and-so Sahaba passed by, like, 5 women in the marketplace and they grabbed their ears and said, oh, I'm going to go to hell now. It's not how it worked. It's not how it worked. And, we can do that. Why? Because if you grew up in the village in the Indian subcontinent, or really any other village in the Muslim world, you tell kids like that when they're 7, women, oh my God, stay away. When they're 10, when they're 12, 13, they're going to get married when they're 16. They're going to get married when they're 18. And they're going to be fulfilled. And they're not going to have these phones in their pockets. And they're not going to have these shashat that you're watching YouTube right now. Allah knows what you watch and what I watch when we're done. Allah knows best. Allah protect us and forgive us for our sin. Allah knows, this is very Emperor's New Clothes-y type of stuff. Allah knows what people are watching. Allah knows best. Allah Ta'ala protect us and forgive us and keep the parda and the sitar of his majesty and his mercy over us, that we should ever be taken to task for this in front of the creation, or in front of him for that matter, in this world or the here. Allah Ta'ala knows best. They didn't have to deal with those things. So you could tell the kids, yeah, stuff for girls don't look, And then what? They'll get married. They'll get married to probably their cousin from the village, and then they're gonna make, they're gonna truly love each other. They're gonna make love to each other. The women are washing and scrubbing the clothes and in good physical shape, and the men are working the fields in their good physical shape, and they're happily ever after. Like a cortisol shower. Oxytocin, not cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Oxytocin is a de-stressing hormone. It was mentioned earlier, but it was mistakenly mentioned. It's oxytocin barish, like a shower of oxytocin, like Indian movie music scene level of that, and that they'd be happy with each other, and they truly love each other in a way that I don't think many people are going to love each other nowadays. The people may not even be capable of loving each other anymore like that. And then afterward, what happens is the village mentality coupled with like the post partition or post post 1967 thing of like, we all have to become doctors and we all have to become engineers. It was great, all become doctors, all become engineers. I have no problem with the doctors. I just talked today with Maulana Mateen Khan. He's in Jersey. And he graduated from the Darul Uloom in Buffalo. And he's actually a very learned person, mashallah. And he's also a medical doctor. He's in the ER, and he was telling me about how it is to dealing with the corona. And it's very interesting to have his perspective as both a scholar and as a medical doctor. And it seems like he's actually good at both of them. And you can see the anwar in his eyes. He's a very handsome person anyway, but you can see the spirituality in him. Go ahead and do all of that stuff, right? Go ahead and do all of that stuff. But you have to find solutions that work for the situation that we're in. And that's one of the beauties of our civilization, is that its underpinning is not a piece of land, Like the ancient Egyptians, they believed, like in their batil kufr religion, they used to believe that if you don't die in Egypt, you won't be resurrected. That's why they had like a very powerful army and civilization, but they never left the land because they needed the land for their civilization. India is kind of like that also, where they consider the land to be like a god that they worship or something like that, even though all the Indians seem to have, mashallah, made it here to Chicago and to other places that but that's, no one said it was supposed to make sense. And the Muslim Indians, obviously, they're going to go everywhere anyway, mashallah, marhaban bikum, in any case. But the point is this is not, it's not contingent on a piece of land. It's not contingent on a particular crown or a particular sword or any physical thing. It's contingent on one usul, on principles that are based on wahi, that's based on revelation, that's based on the book of Allah Ta'ala and the person of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and everything he said and everything he did and everything he accepted and all of his noble states, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it's potable from one place to the other. If somebody ripped open a window into dimension X and we went over there and all of a sudden gravity pushes things away from each other and all life is based on silicon and all, still the Sharia will give us a way of living that's beneficial in dimension X. If aliens come from some other planet and they're mukallaf, they're mentally, they're there together, what would we do? We'd give them da'wah and they would, accept the deen, and they would come in their spacesuits where they're breathing sulfur instead of oxygen, and they would try, cry tears of sulfuric acid in front of the Muwajahah Sharifa while saying, Salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, and whatever weird alien language that they speak, and their tears of sulfuric acid. If the hood was released, it would probably be toxic enough to kill everybody in Medina. But and then they'll have their own ulama that will deal with their own weird masail and whatever, right? Why? Because usuli tradition is a principled tradition. And so we have to use the tradition in order to find solutions that work for us. Part of it is going to have to do with what? Like learning the knowledge of the ancients. Man, if some Moldi wrote a book about how to do it, you should probably read the book and you should be good at it. You should be so good at it that when you walk by, your missus cannot help but smile. You should be so good to your husband that when he walks by, he cannot help but you like grab his attention. You should do that. That's how the companions were, radiyallahu anhum. That's how someone, it's floating around the internet, and I don't even know the veracity, but somebody sent sending around like a quote about Imam Ahmad that like myself and my wife, we were together for so many years, and like we never had like so much of a fight with one another. That's a healthy relationship. It's not just that they sit together and read the Quran. Allah knows best, like maybe they did, I don't know, right? But like, use your common sense. If a relationship is a holistic thing, this is a part of that, that you have to be able to, if you want to live this ayah of the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. You actually have to make some planning for like this thing to happen. You can't just magically assume it's going to happen. And, all of a sudden I'm a doctor, so all my problems are solved and like magically happily ever after. And we can never have a conversation about it because, my God, if my mother ever found out, she'd kill me, or my father ever found out, he'd like take a stick and beat the hell out of me. And like, I said, it's like, toba, grab your, that's not cool. That's not good. And that fakery, that type of fake living ends up usually resulting in weird perversions, right? Like, let's fake like we're celibate and live like a whole life, and then when we become old, it's going to work out, right? And say, go ask the Catholic Church, how did it work out for them? Go ask those people in Latin America whose grandmothers, can show you a sheet with a small slit in the middle, and see their great grandchildren, what is their idea with regards to how this thing is supposed to go down. Go ask those people who, even the Muslims, we're not there to just mock and jeer other people. Even the Muslims themselves, it's very sad to say. It's very sad to say. See which one of their awlad and which one of their progeny is chaste and which one isn't. Our forefathers were chaste people. Our parents were not people who committed zina, and their parents before them were not people who committed zina, and their parents before them, they were ma'lum al-nasab. They're people whose lineages were known. And those of us who accepted Islam from another tradition knows what the value of that is. And through your saying La ilaha illallah, Allah made you of that same status, that you're of pure nasl. how unfortunate and how bad would it be if us or our children, we put them in a position such that they're the first generation that broke this purity and tainted it with something haram. Wal-iyadhu billah. We have to make plans in order to execute this civilization which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for us and laid the principles down for us, and we have to use creative means in order to make it work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Perhaps people may find it strange why Mawli Sabi for an hour he's talking about doing it. It's important. And the thing is that when it happens well, you have like Ahmad bin Hanbal and all these. You have like these people that it's a good piece of an entirely good pie. But on the flip side, what happens, because it's so viscerally connected to your body and it's so intensely connected to your heart and to your mind as well? What happens when this doesn't work for people properly? What will happen? Shaitan will put in their heads in the moment of frustration this idea that if you can't do this according to Islam, then you can't do any of Islam. So I've seen so many people, I don't believe in the deen anymore. Why? And you question, and you find out that the person he found a girlfriend, she completely blows his mind. You found a woman who found a man who genuinely cares for her and cares for her needs and takes care of her. That's the problem. He's haram for her. That solution wasn't found, and then that person was put in a fitna, and there's no excuse. There's no excuse to leave the deen whatsoever. And people don't study aqidah, so for that reason, they think that if they committed sin, it's you may as well throw the baby out with the bath water, that it's some sort of kufr, and it's not kufr. You could be sexually attracted to like office desks, and it's wrong and it's haram as heck, and really weird, and like never gonna find sanction in the shari'ah, as long as the shari'ah is protected and its people are not lifted from this earth. But you're still a Muslim. Not everybody has that even that much understanding. So this is a necessity for the survival of Iman itself amongst people on a civilizational level. Even if the solutions don't work for you or for me, we should work toward them, because civilization is more than just individuals. Let's see. We have Amin from Sharjeel Bhai. Amin. Let's see what else. Would that be similar to the perfumed garden by Sheikh? I don't know. Let's see. Amin. What else? Who are some of the students of Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda that we can still benefit from? The most well-known of them that I'm aware of is the Sheikh Awama, who was in Medina Munawwara until relatively recently, and I think he's now in Istanbul. So you can benefit from him as well. And man, the computer is a little bit far away, so let me sneak up and see what does that say, because the Arabic is really small. So حدثنا ابن مخلد قال حدثنا المروزي قال سمعت أبا عبد الله أحمد بن عفوا حنبل, sorry for the نحو fail, يقول sorry, this is far away. يقول أقامت أم صالح معي 30 سنة فما اختلفت أنا وهي في كلمة. That's beautiful. I mean, you know what? That's so beautiful, mashallah. That's wonderful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised both of their ranks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them a maqam with awliya and Jannah forever. And Allah ta'ala give us a place at their feet as well, because we love them and that we were happy for them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us something that He gave them as well in this world and the hereafter, both from their spiritual graces and from the khayru mata' ad-dunya al-mar'atu as-salihah. It's, I remember hearing this attributed to Imam Ahmad as well, that the best of the enjoyments of this world is a righteous wife. Allah give righteous wives and husbands to all of us according to the proper designation thereof. Inshallah, we make dua, Allah ta'ala accept from us and forgive us if we said anything excessive, inshallah. Whoever wishes to say something can say something in the comment section, inshallah, as well. And like I said, remember Sunday, the dars will be on Dar Qasim's page, and it will be from the Shama'il of Tirmidhi. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.